I'd like very much to welcome you to today's final plenary. This is going to be a session on diversity, inclusion, and the research on implicit bias. And I'm going to introduce all three of our participants. Tricia Rose is going to moderate, and our other two panelists are going to present brief papers, and then we're going to have a general conversation. Our two panelists today are Jennifer Richeson, who is the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation Chair and Professor of Psychology at Northwestern University, in the middle.
Class of '94.
Her research focuses on the social psychological phenomenon of cultural diversity and concerns the way in which social group membership, such as race and gender, impact the way people think, feel, and behave. Specifically, she examines the processes of mind and brain that give rise to stereotyping and prejudice, and in turn shape the way in which individuals experience diversity. She's currently working on two lines of research, one on the dynamics and consequences of interracial contact and diversity, and the other on detecting, confronting, and managing the threats associated with prejudice and discrimination. Through the development of this research, Richeson hopes to contribute to a better understanding of intergroup relations, including how to foster cohesive, culturally diverse environments. Her work has been published in various scholarly journals, including Psychological Science, Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, Nature, Neuroscience, and Journal of Experimental Social Psychology, as well as appearing in popular publications such as The Economist and The New York Times. Rachel Godsil, who's professor of law at Seton Hall School of Law here on the end, is also director of the Perception Institute. Professor Godsil's teaching and research includes civil rights, constitutional law, property, land use, environmental justice, and education. She's co-founder and director of research for the Perception Institute, a national consortium of social sciences, law professors, and advocates focusing on the role of the mind sciences in law, policy, and institutional practices. She collaborates with social scientists on empirical research to identify the efficacy of interventions, I love that, efficacy of interventions to address implicit bias and racial anxiety. She regularly provides trainings and lectures to a wide range of private and public institutions seeking to address the role of bias and anxiety associated with race, ethnicity, religion, and gender, including trainings on implicit bias to state judges across the country on behalf of the National Association of State Judges. She's lead author of the report, The Science of Equality, Volume 1, addressing implicit bias, racial anxiety, and stereotype threat in education and healthcare, and also the author of A Tale of Two Neighborhoods, Implicit Bias in Environmental Decision-making. The moderator for today's panel is our own Tricia Rose, who's professor of Africana Studies and director of the Center for the Study of Race and Ethnicity in America. She graduated from Yale, where she received a BA in sociology and then a PhD from Brown in American Studies. She's an internationally respected scholar of post-civil rights era Black U.S. culture, popular music, social issues, gender, and sexuality. She's most well known for her groundbreaking book on the emergence of hip-hop culture, Black Noise, Rap Music, and Black Culture in Contemporary America, which is a foundational text for the study of hip-hop and one that defined what is now an entire field of study. In 2003, she published an oral history narrative of Black women's sexual life stories called Longing to Tell. Black women talk about sexuality and intimacy. And in 2008, she returned to hip-hop with another book, The Hip-Hop Wars, What We Talk About When We Talk About Hip-Hop and Why It Matters. And besides her variety of strictly scholarly work, Professor Rose speaks to general audiences on a wide range of issues relating to race in America, mass media, structural inequality, popular culture, gender, and sexuality. I'm very pleased today to turn the program now over to Tricia.
Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Excellent, excellent. How are we? We're good? Well, I'm thrilled to see so many of you here. It's like the first sort of sunny, non-0 degree day for what amounts to a good 8 weeks. So thank you for coming. I see many of you are keeping your coats nearby. Very smart. Anything can happen in New England. This is a great honor for me. I'm really excited to be here. But before I make some introductory comments, I really want to make a very special thank you to Lisa Cariago-Lowe. Where is she? Where is she? Lisa, oh, there you are. Lisa, this is really wonderful. This is definitely, see that? All that love you got. Absolutely. People appreciate, you know, she's a powerhouse, very quiet, but nonetheless quite persistent with a terrific vision and commitment. So when I was preparing my comments this morning, I decided she needs a nickname. Because when you work this hard, you need a nickname. So she's Lisa Cariago-Lowe, so in the spirit of youth culture, she's CeeLo. Okay? I just want you to know, you heard it here first, okay? You've got to, this is a sign of endearment. So if I call you CeeLo, it's a hug. It's a verbal hug. So, you know, Jean was so terrific in her introduction of me, much more detail than I certainly wanted to hear. But there's one thing to add, which is that I'm also an alum like Jennifer, and I know she wanted to make sure that we knew about that, that we're both well, one undergrad, one grad Brown alum. But the second thing I want to do before I make some general comments is talk about CSREA very quickly. We sponsored and organized and put this event together for this terrific conference. Our banner's there, and this exhibit, which I'll talk about in a minute, is here. But I want to talk about our mission because it dovetails so much with what this event is about, which is to support and generate rigorous and accessible research, performance, art, and scholarship in the humanities, the arts, and the social sciences on a broad range of issues pertaining to race and ethnicity in the U.S. and related to U.S. transnational migrations. That's too much for the title, so that's why we left that last part out. Our goal is not just to do private research that is inaccessible. We have a very significant mission around accessibility. I think it's incredibly important for those of us who do this work that people can use it and that they not understand this research to be just technically inaccessible. So we want public knowledge to be available. We want to foster public conversation, but we also want to enhance research networks in interdisciplinary ways. That's what centers can do, bring people together. That's okay, come on in. I like the party spirit. How we doing? I like it. That means the reception's going to be fun, so you guys should stay. All right, find some seats. I'm with it. You know, one of the ways these things get broken up is that every department, you know, in various universities have one or two people, if they're lucky, who study some aspect of race and ethnicity, and he or she wanders around talking to people most of the day in their department who don't study race and ethnicity, who see it as a small factor that sort of might occasionally be relevant, but not an organizing principle that shapes whole bodies of research. Why places like CSREA are so important is because it means we can talk and elevate that aspect of our research in transdisciplinary ways that enhances the general conversation in all of these fields. And that's the obvious academic benefit. And of course, there's just the sheer social benefit. Those of us who do, you know, either quirky or esoteric work know that it's hard to find community. And in this structure, that's ultimately what tends to happen with work on race and ethnicity. This exhibit, which we mounted at our current digs, which is in Hillel on the 3rd floor, it's temporary location. I say that, we have lots of University Hall people here, so temporary digs on the 3rd floor of Hillel, which we love, and we're doing lovely time. We've expanded to most of the floor, and we have some great wall space where we mount exhibits. We can't do exhibits with art that are sort of, you know, securable with, you know, insurance, because we can't control access to the space. So we've taken a very sort of, come on in, if you're meant to come in, come on in. Yes, don't you worry. So we don't have what I'd call fine art, because I don't want to get in trouble. But we do, with our mission, the art we do speaks to questions of art and social justice. And this exhibit was a sort of summer brainstorm. And it turned out to be a great success. So I encourage you to take a look at what's here. It's about 20% of a 40 to 50 mounted exhibit at the center. All Brown staff, faculty, students, administrators, who described really without much prompting at all, some experiences around microaggressions, and in some cases, a few microaffirmations. And it was amazing. On the one hand, it is a staggeringly disturbing set of comments. It's hard to believe that people hear these kinds of things going on, but it's also very important to pay attention to it collectively, because the power of microaggressions is that people imagine them in very isolated individual ways. Oh, this one person said this one terrible thing to you, and it's just this one person. And don't take it so seriously, and you're always worried about blah, blah, blah. But when you see it just vaguely writ large, you have to grapple with the weight of that kind of collective experience, both for the individuals who are experiencing it in that individual case, but the climate it cultivates for the community as a whole. But I also want you to pay attention to this exhibit as a sign of enormous courage, because it takes a lot to acknowledge that these things are going on. There's a tremendous kind of attempt to undermine people's confidence in many of these types of comments. So the urgency for our work, it seems to me, is enhanced when you look at these comments. And Hillel is open today, so when we're done, if you're interested, feel free to wander over and just keep going up. You will run into us. You know, when you get out of breath, the exhibit is there. That's how I basically think of the days that I get to work. Now, CSREA has existed a very long time. I believe 1986, 1987 was when it came into existence, but I've been director for a year and a half, and I've taken it in some very different directions. It had mostly a curricular focus, and I've sort of reinvigorated it as a research center for programming and faculty coordination. But we can always use financial support, so I know there are a lot of alum here and people interested in these issues, and there is an effort to provide an endowment for us. So we're just launching that. If you all want to endow me, here I am. I'm endowment ready. I don't know exactly what that means, but I've decided it's true. And we could do so much more. We do an incredible amount, and I'm not going to bore you with all that now, but we could do so much more with steady, significant resources. So we curated this panel because I've been, first of all, I love their work. They're both doing work on both sides, on the academic and on the institutional sort of public advocacy side. And I'm really fascinated by implicit bias research for a variety of reasons. It's not my specific field, but I thought, well, if I'm going to curate this, I want to bring two amazing, distinguished women who do brilliant and heroic work on implicit bias. And luckily, they were available and said yes. So this is total gravy and excitement for me. But I want to specifically, just for 2 minutes, talk a bit about why this kind of work is so important. And not just implicit bias, but studying racial discrimination, how racial consciousness works, the formation of racial identities. You know, it's extremely important, and it takes place across almost every discipline. I wouldn't say every, because that might be a little exaggerated. But it's in many, many disciplines. But we tend, as academics, to think of our research sort of as facing outward, right? So I work at Brown, and then I talk about race out there, or I do implicit bias research, and then it's not about academics, it's about the public. Because, you know, the public needs to know, or other scholars need to know as individuals inside of a scholarly field. But what tends to happen is that when people in our own profession hear about this research, we like to think that we're beyond it. You know, it's sort of academic exceptionalism. You know, of course there's racism, isn't that? It's appalling. You know, and it's always out there. Somewhere, right? And so we have departments say, well, you know, yes, there must be a problem in the so-and-so department at some school, somewhere out there, you know, and you're like, no, not here. We would never let that happen, right? So there's this academic exceptionalism that I think is really important for us to consider as we do institutional diversity work. That is to say, we need to really harness scholars as assets for diversity planning inside of our institutions. And implicit bias is an excellent place to start because it completely disrupts the fiction of academic exceptionalism. You can't really do and pay attention to significant implicit bias research and make the case that somehow you're immune to this process. So I'm really excited about having them here to bridge this gap today in the context of diversity, implementation programs, and to be able to use implicit bias research in this context. So I'm going to turn this over to Rachel, who's going to go first and lay out some ideas, and then we'll move along. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's an incredible honor to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me. And Jen is one of my heroes, so it's wonderful to be on a panel with her. She is. So it's interesting. I have most recently done presentations on this topic in front of judges who are generally, highest percentage are white, although not everywhere. Philadelphia, New York is a little more integrated. Delaware, Ohio, not so much. And also to community groups where the rooms look more like this. And I generally have two different responses depending upon the group. The judges begin very skeptically. I've been told, you're not really a lawyer, you're clearly some sort of social worker. And they're very skeptical because they're objective. They are there to uphold the law. And they are utterly and totally sincere, I believe, and the social science supports, in their view that they want to be and that they are able to be objective. So they have to, in some sense, be disrupted in the view and in their self-identity as a person who can truly not take identity issues into account when making life-transforming decisions. Are you going to remove a child from a home? Are you going to sentence someone to 10 years in jail? Is the person's race, and specifically, we now know, the color of their skin very separately from just the box that they check, is that going to be a determinant in the decision that you make, that life-altering decision that you make? So for that group, I have to convince them there's something they should think about. When I go to a community group that looks more like this room, the general assumption is the white people are just lying. And whether or not you're lying, I don't know. Maybe not. You just seem to care about these issues. You might be. But the white people are just lying. This implicit bias idea is just a cover for white people who really want there to be continued absolute and total white supremacy because that's where we get our power. And so there's a kind of a binary that generally I come into, and I accept and I welcome the conversation sort of after our discussions, pushback from wherever you are, because it's an important conversation and trying to uncover where on this binary we as a country are, where any particular place is again, the conversation I hope we'll have. Did that just, no, thank you. So we're also in a university, obviously, and again, I welcome Tricia's suggestion that we focus today more on what's happening within universities and slightly less on what's happening outside of the university, although I think we'll be talking about that as well. And what's fascinating and distressing about what's happening in universities is, as Trish suggested, most of us do think we as academics, and particularly liberal academics who have these great values, that somehow we are immune from these larger social forces. We may even, and probably are, willing to acknowledge there's structural racism out there, and there's racist issues among those who are outside of here, but as Trish suggested and said better than I'm of course immune. And there's also a sense that the students who don't do well in my classroom, well, perhaps if they'd had slightly better preparation, we need to fix those K through 12 schools. But what we've learned is intelligence is so far from fixed, and it's exceedingly frail. And so if students come into an institution and they have signals as they emerge, you're not necessarily who we expected, and those are going to be these implicit signals, their capacities can be dramatically infected. We all know the experience of talking to someone who looks at us and just thinks we're fabulous. And we become our most fabulous selves. We're our smartest, we're funniest, we have the most insightful comments. And then we know the experience when someone kind of looks at us with a little skepticism. I don't know that you're going to say something very smart. it's much, much harder to say something smart when you're met with that face. And Jen is going to talk about this with so much depth of research. And so the idea of how we as institutions, as academic institutions, create our culture is going to determine how our students, who we have such a responsibility to, are able to fare and what kind of contributions we are helping them to make. They may surpass us and make those contributions no matter what we do. But shouldn't we, as our metaphor we were talking about earlier, shouldn't we place the wind at their back rather than create a headwind against them? And so this research is really valuable for that reason. What we see is the dynamics that exist in our society, and these are only three. Again, we're not talking structure here, and we know that's part of the conversation. But three of the social psychological dynamics that pervade any institution in this country: implicit bias, racial anxiety, which again Jen will address, and stereotype threat, are alive, sadly, and very, very well within our institutions of higher education. So, in order to have a little bit of an experience, in order to have a little bit of an experience of sort of how I like to meet the audience, either audience, I'd like all of you to move with me, and we'll have a little group participation. So I'll make sure that's right up there. Okay. So what I desperately need, and please, I know it's been a long day, is everyone as a group to state the colors of the text below as quickly and as loudly as you can, but it has to be together. So can everyone begin? Okay, start. Okay, that was pretty good, right? All right, let's try it again. Try it again. Fast. Oops. You know, again, this is a really exceedingly impressive group of people. You're all at a far fancier university than I come from, and I know the issue isn't you didn't want to be helpful. I think you did. But what was really difficult was we're just used to reading what's up there. We've been taught to do that since we were really, really little. And the first time it was a little hard because you still wanted to read. The second time it's impossible because the green is brown. And so do you say brown or do you say green? And the second green, it says blue. And so what we're experiencing in this kind of small, you know, in some ways it seems silly exercise. It's actually a very, very famous exercise called the Stroop test that they use in social psychology for a whole host of purposes, is we're experiencing the disjuncture between our executive brain, what we consciously want to do, and our automatic brain, which has been trained for so long to do a single thing. And this is sort of a metaphor for how it's possible for those white people, lots of us, who say, I'm a good person, I'm not a racist person, I believe in egalitarian values, and yet our actions don't reflect those beliefs. And so, again, what I say to the judges is, if we look at the data, if we listen to the experiences of the people in your courtroom, we know that behavior in our courtrooms is not consistent with the values you hold dear. We know that. That doesn't mean at this point that we are saying we don't believe you when you say you want to be objective, when you say you want to be fair. We do believe you. But what in fact we've learned is the belief that you can be objective and the certainty with which you hold that belief is actually dangerous. Because if we went back and did the Stroop test one more time and we went slowly, we could be perfect. But we would have to move slowly because we're having a schema inconsistent experience where we're being asked to do something that's counter to our automatic reactions. And this idea of schema inconsistency is what's at the root of what many of you might have heard of, the implicit association test, which is at Project Implicit. If you haven't seen it, just Google Project Implicit. It's very interesting. There are an array of, sort of computer exercises where essentially what's measured is whether one can as quickly associate particular identity groups with positive words as with negative words. So the traditional one that began sort of the larger conversation was black-white. Can a white person as quickly, as automatically associate a black face with the positive words as he or she can a white face with the positive words? And similarly, is there a disjuncture in the time between it takes the white person to associate the white face with the negative words? And for the vast majority of white people, there's a disjuncture. For most white people, it is difficult to as quickly associate positive words with black faces and negative, and then they move more slowly when associating negative words with white faces. There's another test, crucially important when we think about criminal justice, that considers whether it is quicker, whether whites are quicker, or all of us actually, because people of color can have implicit biases as well, whether we are faster to associate a black face with a weapon than a white face. And again, for the vast majority of whites, and for some significant percentage of people of color as well, that association happens faster. And we all know, and we have seen so tragically, the effect of that faster association. In presenting to a government group, there was actually a sheriff's officer there who noted to me that there'd been 4 shootings in his county in a 6-month period, 2 of white men, 2 of black men. And what he said is, the white men in both instances had guns out. In the second instance, a shot had been fired before the police shot back. With both black men, no gun was present. And so again, it's that automaticity, it's that speed that's so risky. This slide shows a not particularly sophisticated, not particularly rigorous or fancy study, but I have to say it is one that when lawyers look at this, I was going to say their faces go white. They have a very strong reaction. And it's again, I'm somewhat pained when I show this to audiences, particularly that include students. Because if you're looking at this, what you're seeing is the identical memo was shown to law firm partners, intentionally written to be okay, decent, but with some errors intentionally embedded. And what we see some very provocative comments when the partners thought that the associate was an African-American male from NYU. They thought Tom Meyer, when he was black, needed lots of work, can't believe he went to NYU, that's a trigger, average at best. When they thought he was white, generally a good writer, has potential. Now, those could be cherry-picked to be the most provocative. What I think we really have to look at, and frankly what disturbed me as much or even more because it measures the general, is the number of spelling errors that were identified when the partners thought he was white and the number identified when they thought he was black. Exactly twice as many when they thought he was black. The old adage the African Americans often say, I have to be twice as good. Literally, in this instance, it's twice as good. And so I sometimes will ask the judges, why do you think this is so? And they kind of have to admit, there was some skepticism probably in the back of those partners' minds about the black associate. And so when they saw that first error, it's called confirmation bias, they then scrutinized that memo with every ounce of their being. And this is, again, when this is shown to law firm partners, suddenly they hang their head and they have to think about, could this have been me? Could I have done this? And there's silence. But the answer isn't, as sometimes, frankly, people like I used to be, white liberals, the answer isn't for white people just to be really nice and enthusiastic. Oh, your work is fabulous. You did a great job on the memo. That's highly unhelpful. And that's a phenomena as well. So these are 2 studies that show the sort of consequences of kindness. Middle school teachers receiving intentionally poorly written essays and not giving as much constructive critical feedback to black and Latino students as they do to white students. What does that do to our kids? They're not getting the feedback that they need. But interestingly, in that particular study, the teachers did give equal levels of constructive criticism to black students when they felt their principals backed them, when they felt like they kind of had a sense of belonging and support within their schools. They still didn't give the same level of critical feedback to the Latino students, which suggests there are 2 different phenomena potentially going on. One of them is implicit bias against the Latino students, certain assumptions made about their writing capacity. But with respect to the black students, it suggests there's something else going on that we also need to think about. Implicit bias is not the only phenomena that if we solve it somehow, which is challenging, we're all done. This phenomena of whites being worried about being racist and therefore not providing the kind of honest, constructive feedback that they ought, as we know, is harmful. And so this other study describes peer advisors at a university who didn't tell, in the exercise, are given an identical resume by a student who wants to go to med school and is wondering, should I take organic chemistry and calculus in the same semester? Well, apparently, although I wasn't a med student, no human being should take those two things in the same semester because, it's too much, you'll die. And the peer advisors would say that to the white students and say that to the Asian American students, but they wouldn't say it to the black students. So first question was, well, are they racist? Are they biased? They just not care about the black students. But then they were asked, will you spend some time working with the student further? Of course. So it's not that they're biased, it's not that they don't care, it's they're afraid of saying something that they think will be perceived as racist. Not helpful. And it creates a phenomenon, I think the phrase for it's important to know, of attributional ambiguity on the part of students of color. If you're a student of color and you know about both of these phenomena, you know that sometimes you're criticized and flaws are seen in your work that would not be seen in the work of a white student. You know that happens. But you also know that there are some happy liberals who are going to say nice things no matter what you do. So you've got these two different spaces that you've seen. How do you know how to respond to feedback? It's awful to not know whether or not the feedback is real. And it creates a disengagement, reasonably, from those professors because you don't know what the feedback means. White students, we don't have to deal with that question. We just get the feedback and we respond to it, and we sort of presume that it means something, and we go on. Major burden, yet another burden that students of color experience in higher ed that white students don't. Another phenomena, implicit bias is often assumed to be cognitive. It's in your brain, it's the decisions you make, it's whether or not you bring one resume back, it's whether or not you shoot when you see someone. It's also behavioral and dynamic in relationships. So people with high levels of implicit bias tend to show that in the way that they look at people, in the way that they answer questions, in the way that how close they stand. And Jen's going to talk about some of this in more detail. And as we know with professors, if they're responding differently, answering questions differently, moving forward, moving back differently, students pick up on that. What about other students? Who sits next to you when you sit down in a room? Do you feel welcome? When all of that is manifest in your experience at an institution, it obviously makes a difference. So what can be done? I know I'm going to have to move quickly because I've probably gone way over my time. Okay? So one problem with the implicit bias concept is, for some people, it's like, well, we're all a little bit biased. Oh, well, it's the culture. But that's actually a completely unacceptable answer. It is not that we have a fixed level of bias. We don't. There are steps that institutions can take to make bias less likely. Having a very multiracial set of leaders works really well for that. There's also, and really it should be on the institutional level that this work gets done. But for individuals, it's useful to know that there's a new body of research that's developing that really lays out steps that individuals can take that will reduce implicit bias. Tricia Devine at University of Wisconsin is sort of the lead in a lot of this work. So these steps that she describes, essentially the idea is to create accessible counter-stereotypes, to learn to individuate when you're looking at people of color, because lots of white people don't, because remember, we're colorblind. And so since we're colorblind, that means we can't look carefully, and we don't have any language to distinguish between people, but that makes you literally blind in a way that makes you frankly biased. And perspective taking, not in the sense that, what would I have done if I were walking down the street and the police officer told me to go on the sidewalk? Well, I, of course, would have just gone to the sidewalk. I'm taking that person's perspective. No, it's not what would I, white lady who police have been really nice to all the time would do. It's what would a person who's lived a life of being harassed, of being fined, of being disrespected regularly. That's a different kind of perspective taking. And finally, although complexly, there's the interracial contact that Jen will talk about. There's also resilience strategies that we can teach our students, and resilient strategies that have to be made available to our students to navigate this complex world that our students are living in that we should have fixed a long time ago, but we didn't. Now, the second phenomenon, and again, I want to move faster now, stereotype threat is a field of study that was pioneered by Claude Steele, who was then at Stanford, and it's been known in higher ed for now, what, 20 years?
At least.
It's been known for a long time, and yet we haven't done nearly as much about it as we ought. And this gets back to this idea of sort of intelligence being frail, or fragile rather, not frail, frail's the wrong word, fragile. And the idea that if you are one of the few in a given area, and if your identity is salient because of stereotypes that exist around your identity, that depresses typically, or often, not for everyone, but it often depresses your performance when all of your cognitive capacities are needed to do the work. So this is a table from the original experiment done by Claude Steele and Josh Aronson, where they were asking the question, why, and this gets back to something discussed earlier, why are so few of our brilliant students of color going into grad school and PhD programs? Why isn't this happening? They're so good. One of the questions was, is it something about what happens when they're sort of going into that next step and taking the GRE? Is it something about how they view themselves and how their performance, is not recognizing their capacity? And so the hypothesis was tested by giving one group of students a difficult portion of the verbal GRE and saying, this is indicative of how well you will do in a graduate study. This is indicative of how well you'll do on the GRE, which is hard and measures intelligence. It was diagnostic. And you can see the racial difference in the diagnostic version. The other group were given the identical section of the GRE, and they were identically situated academically. But you see the degree to which the race difference disappeared. Because in that second instance where they were told, we just want to see sort of the experience of taking a difficult test, we don't care how you do. We're just interested in your experience of it. In that instance, any stereotype they might be fear confirming that others have linked to their identity group isn't relevant. So all of their cognitive capacities can go to the test. And we see what happens. We see how well they do. So there have been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of studies that have now been done since 1995 when that first study was pioneered that have confirmed the power of stereotype threat and the incredibly harmful effect that it has had in under-recognizing the capacities of students of color. And when we think about this number that the two scholars, Walton and Spencer, came up with, which is really salient, sort of one way of thinking about the effect, the depressive effect that stereotype threat has had on the illustrated capacities of students of color, and this is probably an underrepresentation, 62 points on the SAT. Underrepresentation. And it, again, has impacts in experiences in the classroom. It can be, in some sense, catastrophic, as it causes students not to know what their true capacity is, and it certainly causes their professors to have no idea what their capacity is. But the good news is, it's not inevitable. It is so far from being inevitable. There is so much that institutions and individual professors can do to prevent stereotype threat from being triggered, to essentially neutralize it. There's a host of interventions that we all have had access to for a long time that we have not used. Our institutions have not used them, and we should. So this is just a brief listing of them, and they're written up in several different papers and certainly our study. I'm going to talk very briefly about two of them because I think they're very powerful. One is, Bhuju Dasgupta is the person who's sort of known for this one, the stereotype inoculation model. This idea of if you have people who are of your identity group in the place you want to be, and if you have people who are of your identity group as peers in the place where you're trying to get there, the stereotypes, the power of those stereotypes diminishes enormously. So it matters who's in front of the classroom. It matters a lot. And this is all, people are like, of course, duh. We shouldn't have to be saying this again, but we do have to have the numbers. We do have to have the research clearly to support this, to push it forward, to make institutions recognize how powerful it is. The second, again, pioneered in the mid-90s by Cohen and Steele, is there's certainly always going to be, not always, but they're likely to be professors who are of a different identity group in front of the room. Can we, as people of a different identity group, of a dominant group, be mentors to students of color? Can we give the criticism, share the knowledge, contribute to the development without triggering that attributional ambiguity? Yes. And what we see is an enormous response, a very positive response from students of color. What we can't do is just give unmitigated criticism because of the reasonable concern that that criticism is simply a reflection of, frankly, our bias as we're looking at the work. We also can't just give generalities, oh, it's fabulous criticism, because that it's fabulous doesn't mean anything. It's meaningless. It sounds like liberal condescension. What can be done and what has been identified as being wildly successful is giving wise criticism in the sense of, I have high expectations. I have high expectations for you, and here's why I think you as an individual can meet them, and give reasons. What that does, you're reaffirming the high expectations, giving very specific, non-general suggestions as to what this person has done to show, this, again, non-group identical professor is, it's created a safe context in which you know that person actually cares and is going to work with you to help you be your best. And I'm just going to end with this there's the adversity model of teaching. Some of you may know these from silly movies about law, to the left and to the right. In the middle is a colleague of mine who exemplifies the wise critic, and she's Michelle Adams. She's also a Brown alum, so I thought it would be nice to end there. Thank you so much. That's so good!
That was really great, Rachel. You are a social psychologist. We claim you. So, good afternoon. I can't say how happy I am to be back at Brown. Susan, earlier in her talk, spoke about how transformative this place was for her as an undergrad, and that was certainly true for me in many ways, although I didn't recognize it until a little late as well, a little later in the field, but it certainly has motivated my work in this area. And recently, I wrote my first op-ed, and it was about Brown, of course, and I called it my love letter to Brown, and I figured after I got rejected from the Times and the Globe or wherever else, I would try to publish in the Brown Daily Herald. It actually got into the Boston Globe, but it's really been this incredible source of pride and inspiration for me. So when Tricia said, can you come? And I'm like, I have no business getting on a plane, not go anywhere. I was like, of course, because this is home in very real ways for me. That said, I recognize that Brown, like many institutions of higher learning, including my own, I'm at Northwestern right now, has some work to do in this area, and I'm happy to contribute some research that I think speaks directly to what I think of as the promise of diversity, but also its peril. I think we tend to get a little bit happy when we think about diversity. I mean, it's such a pretty word. And it is a goal, but we don't necessarily consider that diversity is a solution to some things, but it also, like almost every solution, creates new problems, and new problems that we have to take seriously and think about. So my work really starts at the place of, all right, let's say we've increased diversity, and we have in many domains of life, and certainly nationally, diversity is increasing. It just is. So now what? A lot of work, I'm sure you've heard, talks about the potential benefits, and I put potential there for a reason, of diversity, and clearly there's compelling evidence that diversity, especially as it creates opportunities for intergroup contact and dialogue, especially on a college campus, can indeed lower prejudice, increase positive attitudes in any number of ways. We also know that diversity, be it in classrooms or in work groups, does produce more creative solutions to many types of problems, and undoes, so we're sort of learning lately that it actually undoes some of the bad things that homogenous groups do that we don't even pay attention to. We're like, oh, that's just how it is. And I'm like, no, it's not how it should be. And diversity, by disrupting our assumptions that everyone who looks like us thinks like us, and that means, of course, we quickly come to the right answer, actually in many ways serves a protective function against very catastrophic things like groupthink, which is many argue was what really was responsible for the Challenger disaster. So diversity is good, both in terms of the processes it engenders, and also because it's the just and equitable thing to do. That said, it's also the trigger and catalyst for so many challenges. We know by the very same token as diversity provides opportunities for contact, it also provides the opportunity for stereotyping, turns out, for the expression of negative attitudes, to find out that people don't like your group. Like when you're with just people who are you don't know that your group is not liked and valued necessarily. It's diversity that tells you, oh, I don't belong here, right? That's what it does, right? It also can, and this was famously shown by Putnam in Bowling Alone in his later work, that diversity can increase the motives for social isolation. You just stop trusting everybody. You don't know what to do. It's stressful, it's overwhelming, so you hunker down. And in the language of my field, it creates the possibility for what I call social identity threat. And this is what Rachel was talking about. Again, this is where you might find out not only that lots of people necessarily don't think your group is all that great and belongs here, it also creates the opportunity to find out that a lot of people think you're prejudiced. And that's not acceptable here, right? And that's a threat to the value of your social identity if you are on the dominant side, right? I mean, I think the conversation about group privilege is a great example of this. What do you mean I'm privileged on this domain by virtue of just existing in this body? That's threatening, especially in an American society where we really believe in meritocracy. I mean, really believe in it. And on a college campus, similarly, right? So I like to think of diversity as a paradox, right? There's potential peril, and it's been documented in study after study after study of increased intergroup tension and exclusionary attitudes. Think about the rise of immigration as a great example of the propensity to activate attitudes that people didn't even know they had, or they certainly weren't going to tell you. Now they'll tell you, right? But there's also potential promise by increasing these opportunities for intergroup contact and dialogue. So what's the skinny on interracial contact? And this is something I've been studying for, oh goodness gracious, how long have I been out of Brown? That many years. This is my first year project in grad school. I started studying interracial contact, and I'm still doing it. Well, we know it's good in the long term, but another paradox is that it's tough and difficult in the short term. And why is that? Well, turns out, like a lot of other experiences that people don't have, they don't have a lot of interracial contact. This report came out about how the average white person's social network is just 1% black. Okay, well, what does that mean for when we, whether it's you get to your, college and you have a unit? Yeah, we still have those, right? They're still called that? Okay, yeah, and there are all these people who are different from you, and you're like, ooh, I don't know about this. This is different. This is unfamiliar. Well, of course it's tough, right? There's lots of things to overcome, right? So we know many things lead us to have these close social networks that are very homogenous, right? There's just segregation, right? I mean, housing is everything is still segregated in society, right? We pretend that it's not, but that's just not true. In fact, it's as segregated as it was 50 years ago, including schools, despite having fixed desegregation apparently, but no, not so much. There also, in some cases, a lack of interest, right? It takes something of yourself to go out of your comfort zone on any dimension, and this is just as true on race and culture. We also know, and this is what Rachel was flagging, that sometimes people are concerned about looking bad or about feeling bad, right? That's the sort of upside and downside of the hierarchy. Looking prejudiced is bad. It's morally unacceptable, right? I mean, we heard President Bush at the time, Kanye West was like, President Bush doesn't care about black people, back when we liked Kanye. And Bush said, you can call me anything, but I'm not a racist. And I was like, anything? You can call me anything? Pedophile, drunk. I mean, there are a lot of things I can think of that I think would be actually worse than being called racist. I do. But that's what he said, and we know there are data that are somewhat consistent with this idea, right? It's a badge that you need to be cast off the moral island, right? And people avoid the label like the plague. Unfortunately, they don't avoid the behavior like the plague, and that's a problem. Another problem, and Rachel flagged this too, is that not only do people in academia think that they're above all this race bias stuff, millennials think they're above it. So not only are there compelling data that they are just as racially prejudiced, both explicitly and implicitly, as everybody else, the way that they differ from their older counterparts is that they're completely convinced that they're not, right? In part because they've been told that. Oh, you guys are so tolerant. We will age out of this whole race problem. We need to wait another 50 years. I'm like, but didn't they just say that like 30 years ago? I thought we were the solution. Well, we blew it. So now it's moved on. No, it turns out, right, we're not going to age out of this. So just this graph shows the taller bars are the sort of amount of implicit bias people show, and on the x-axis it's age, and the shorter bars are explicit. So until you get to 60 plus, you see a little bit greater bias, but everybody else looks the same. Millennials are, I hate to tell you, you're not special in this way. So, okay, we have some work to do. But it turns out, and this is what quite a bit of my research has been about, is that interracial contact is hard. It might be beneficial in the long run, but it's tough. And we need to stop ignoring the actual reality of engaging in interracial contact, because that's certainly not gonna, I mean, people don't like to do stuff, right? You don't do activities that you don't like to do if you have a choice. And it turns out most members of any majority group, they have a choice in engaging in this, that, or the other through life. Again, I harken back to our social networks are super segregated. Part of that is because desegregating our social networks is tough, okay? So a lot of my work, and others in my field, have shown that interracial contact and other types of intergroup contact too, this interracial is not special in this way, they're tough because they lead to uncertainty about how to behave, anxiety, discomfort, and heightened self-consciousness, other things we don't enjoy feeling. This has also been shown to affect people physiologically, right? Your body prepares for like impending doom and threat, right? For an interaction with another human being, right? Think about that. And quite a bit of my work has shown that managing all of these concerns and experiences are cognitively taxing. And we've shown this in a variety of studies. I'll just kind of walk you through quickly one paradigm. Participants on this side of the coin, we're talking about white students, college students, who come in and they take the IET, and then we have them engage in an interaction with either a black or a white member of our research team, often called a confederate, and usually they talk about at least one race-related topic. And then after we give them that Stroop task that you guys failed. But you can see, right, it really takes something to inhibit that dominant tendency to read the word, right? If you're a native English speaker, it's really strong in favor of the correct response, which is to name the color, right? So what we're measuring is people's capacity to do that, which is called inhibitory ability. And it turns out, just like today at the end of the day, or after you've engaged in something also effortful, you get worse and worse and worse at this, right? It's like sometimes people use the muscle metaphor. You've been using it a lot, you're kind of tired, right? And you sort of have to relax. You fail at certain things, okay? So what we wanted to know, so here's my little version of this Stroop. Okay, so what we're measuring here is the reaction times, the difference between doing what was called the incompatible trials, the one y'all failed, and control trials, which is X's, okay? And we know that the longer it takes you, the bigger the difference, the poorer the performance. So this is, again, an early study I did at Dartmouth. Yay, shout out to Dartmouth people. Although when you see the results, maybe you're like, Dartmouth. So was whether or not people find it more difficult to perform this task after a brief, and when I say brief, I mean 5 to 7 minute interracial interaction, okay, with another Dartmouth student. And indeed they did. So hopefully you can see the axes in the interracial. The big bar, the tall one, is after the interracial contact. Again, higher numbers mean poorer performance. They did significantly worse on this task compared to just having the same conversation, still a race-related topic, but with another white participant. And we know that implicit bias predicts the magnitude of this, this difference. So does explicit bias, it turns out. So it's not, but these are all like really well-meaning, back when they were going to save the world, right? Because they had good racial attitudes, right? So it's not about meaning well, right? That's not the issue. And this is, what is the issue is what we like to call activated interracial contact concerns. I think racial anxiety is probably a far better way to talk about it. But it's that concern about appearing prejudiced for whites, right, while navigating this interaction, and the concern about experiencing prejudice for minorities, right? So the same interaction, we're both concerned about your prejudice. You're concerned about it leaking, and I'm concerned about it leaking to me, right? We're both managing this, right? And it turns out it's effortful. So we've done a number of studies really trying to nail down this effect. It's not the nicest thing to do to people, but we give them chocolate afterwards and talk them off the ledge. But we can increase their concerns about appearing prejudiced, right? We give them the IAT, and then we give them actually quite veridical feedback, but we call it false feedback, that most people are more prejudiced than they think they are. Turns out, now go talk about whatever with this black guy. That raises the stakes. Okay, when we do that, the two bars on the left are the prejudice feedback. You see this effect gets bigger, right? Managing this concern about appearing prejudiced during the course of interaction is tough. You give people a cognitive task afterwards, they fail, right? They do worse. But we can also alleviate it, right? So instead of sort of raising the stakes before the interaction, we dive it down. We say, you know what, we're doing this study, we just need to have people talking about racial profiling, but we need to have people really giving both sides, the costs and benefits. You know, take a minute to write down your thoughts. You know, we want to hear both costs and benefits, and, you know, use it to guide your opinions. And, you know, this person you're going to talk to who's a black guy, he knows that you were told to do this, right? So it's not necessarily your opinions that you're giving. You know, it could be anybody's. It's just what people think. Turns out when we do that, the effect is gone. So again, the slide's on the, I think, on the right for you. So the script condition, right? We give them a script to follow. It's gone, right? It's managing this racial anxiety that's tough. Okay, the other side of the coin is what's at stake for ethnic minorities. And this, you know, we've shown a lot of, I'm not going to talk about this today so much, where we talk about, you know, their concerns about contending with prejudice or dealing with prejudice. I'm going to go to another line, which is really understudied, and I think my lab probably has sort of 2 of, or maybe 3 of the 4 papers on this. It's just having to deal with this, right? I mean, there's all this implicit bias. Rachel told us it leaks through behavior, and it's out there, and it turns out it comes face to face with people like me, okay, to deal with it. So what we wanted to test here was, how does being exposed to this type of what we call contemporary bias, subtle bias, the expression of implicit bias through behavior, how does that affect racial minority students? Okay, this is the microaggressions, right? This is, but in a slightly different operationalization. Okay, so we know that subtle bias is often revealed in both sort of nonverbal, so body language, sometimes it's called paraverbal, so the ums and ahs that people, sort of other indicators of anxiety that people express. And we know from quite a bit of study that implicit bias is usually more negative than people's explicit attitudes, and so it leaks through their nonverbal behavior, but your verbal messages are still very positive. So you're given that positive feedback that's useless to the student, but it turns out the nonverbal behavioral expressions are quite negative. That leads to a mixed message, right? Turns out people can tell. So what is the effect of getting this mixed message on really important aspects of sort of human functioning? So we look at emotions, but in this study I'm going to say this category of cognition, of cognitive control, of inhibitory capacity. So in this study, we had black college students. They had a 10-minute interaction with a white, we call Confederate partner, but they were actors that we trained. And they exchanged information about each other, presumably, right? The participant really gave information about themselves, but the actor, there was a standard set of information that they gave depending on condition. Okay, and this was used to, in part, to expose these black students to different types of bias, okay? So in the subtle or contemporary bias condition, the actor, presumably this person, another student that they were going to interact with, made really positive statements on their profile sheet about diversity and the diversity of the campus, okay? Unfortunately, they then came in and sort of behaved kind of negatively non-verbally. Okay, and I'll show you that looks like. The blatant was the pair, right? Negative statement about diversity on campus, and they came doing the very same avoidant behavior, okay? And then, of course, no prejudice, as they said positive attitudes about diversity, and then they behaved very friendly, okay? So what was this information? Well, they were just told, all of the profiles said, just tell us something about that you're surprised about at Northwestern. And in the subtle and no bias conditions, it was constrained, so we wrote these. The partner, all white, these were actors, were said to have written, I like being around so many different types of people at NU. I enjoy meeting and learning about people from all backgrounds. It's great here. Something that's believable from a first-year student, right? In the blatant bias, they said, I feel a bit uncomfortable being around so many different types of people at NU. Where I'm from, people are pretty much all white. I think that makes things easier sometimes, okay? Also true, and something that a first-year student might say. Now, this information then was either paired with this sort of approachy, positive, friendly nonverbal behavior, and I'll show you a clip of it, or this more negative, avoidant nonverbal behavior. Okay, so let's see. This is gonna work. Did that work? No. Yeah, I don't have a cursor, so. Let's see if this will do it. Is it going? Ooh, oh, oh. Fred! Up there it is, okay. So this is the avoidant. You see this is an actor, she comes in, she sits at a different table. They know it's an interaction study, so that's strange. This is the black participant whose face is blurred out for confidentiality, right? So she's done her own thing, and she's trained to do this, right? And we train them up to behave in these ways, so it's consistent. And they didn't know about this whole profile sheet, okay? So the black student's just like, dude, you're supposed to be sitting over here, come on over. She's like, yeah, no. Okay, then they're playing this little tic-tac-toe game. And you can see she's like, I'm so not touching you. And you see then the participant starts behaving in kind. And now they're doing this items to bring to college task, which is supposed to be collaborative, and you see she's a little avoidant. Okay, all right, let me see if I can make the other one go, just to have a bit of comparison. Apparently not. Okay, that should do it. All right, so this is the friendly, or I call normal. See, she comes in, she sits at the table. They're waiting for the experimenter, so, you know, they're just doing their thing. So it's not overly bubbly either, right? Like, oh, I'm just so happy you're here, right? This is a tic-tac-toe. She hands her the pen. So it's normal, right? It's not, you know, overly ridiculous in any dimension. Okay. So what we wanted to know was, how does having been exposed to this avoidant nonverbal behavior, basically either paired with an expectation for somebody who's positive, right, who has positive explicit attitudes, excited about diversity, so that's the contemporary bias, this mismatch condition, how does that affect aspects of cognition, again on that street task, so what we call cognitive depletion sometimes, how is that affected by this combination that is the manifestation of contemporary bias compared to blatant bias, which is, you know what, I'm not really feeling all this diversity and I'm in this interracial interaction and I'm gonna keep my distance, right? That's the blatant or no bias. And what we found is that, so the middle bar, the high one, is the subtle bias. That was the most cognitively costly experience for participants, more so than the blatant bias, and somewhat more so than the no bias, right? And gets at the attributional ambiguity question, people don't even believe the no bias. They're a little skeptical about that too, which explains what's happening here. So managing these contact concerns and these experiences with subtle bias is difficult, and that also undermines the cognitive functioning of minority students on these predominantly white college campuses. And I should have said earlier that this cognitive capacity, sometimes called self-regulation, it predicts everything. I mean, tell me, I don't even want to go into this, but I'm a little depleted. It's the end of our quarter. All I want to do is eat Haagen-Dazs and comfort foods, right? Everything that requires willpower is predicted by this very executive function, making wise decisions in every aspect of life, avoiding the temptation of drugs and alcohol, not taking unnecessary risks in terms of gambling, right? Doing well in school, right? One of the best predictors. So grit, you guys heard about grit, it's like a buzzword now, right? It's big important. One piece of grit is this capacity, self-regulation, right? So the extent to which people are underperforming their classes, especially at the end of a hard quarter, is predicted by the very amount of cognitive capacity that they have left after contending with all this other stuff, okay? So I'm going to just move forward to suggest that this is tough. Interactions are tough for both sides, and managing these impressions and feelings about what's going on can be difficult. There are studies now, again, several from my lab, looking at what we can do, and they're all consistent with what Rachel said. So we sort of call these sort of mindset manipulations. So thinking about perspective taking is one. Get a growth mindset is another. We call it learning goals. So instead of facing an interaction as an opportunity to fail and to be proved to be prejudiced, thinking of the interaction as an opportunity to learn, as an opportunity for intercultural exchange, as an opportunity to grow, even in the domain of prejudice, right, is a way out of this bind. All right. This is tough. We're not born this way. And it's even tougher because our construals of race and racism are so binary. We think that something that is difficult in the race domain means I'm potentially racist. In any other domain, even a cultural domain, you show up in France and you actually haven't been there before, you're not surprised it's difficult to navigate. Doesn't mean you're racist. It means you don't know what you're doing. It means you don't have any experience in the domain. Getting that experience actually makes it easier, but in order to get that experience, you can't shut it down because of fear of looking bad, in this case, looking prejudiced. So this is really what we need to do. Dial down the apprehension, the concern, the overweight put on getting it right, especially on a college campus, when what are they here for, if not to engage across all kinds of dimensions of difference, and knowing that it's okay, and you know what, you're gonna make mistakes. It's how you bounce back that is important. Thanks.
So much. We have about 20 minutes, and so what I want to do is I just have a couple of sort of prime questions. I'll skip the secondary ones. I have like 100, so that's not a good enough time frame for 20 minutes. Let me just follow up on a couple of angles, and then I'll want to throw it open because I know people have their own questions to ask as well. Something came up. This wasn't actually on my list, so I know I know it's not going to be a trauma question, but Rachel, you said it, and I'm wondering if this can play out for you too, Jen. So has color blindness actually enhanced implicit bias? I have all kinds of structural critiques of color blindness. It's absurd. Many historians and political scientists argue about color blindness being, really a new articulation of white, domination, basically, through a new mechanism. But I'm wondering if it has actually enhanced implicit bias.
Should we answer that? So I wouldn't say, I don't know longitudinally whether that's true, but if you present people, we've done experiments on this, with information about colorblindness, a colorblind model of diversity, compared to a more multicultural model of diversity, they do immediately express more implicit bias under that frame.
Wow. So, that's really interesting. I'm really glad. Okay. So,
am I not on? I'm sorry.
Well, I think he's controlling it from there. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. You're back.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So experimentally, we've shown this, that color blindness thinking about colorblindness makes people express, sort of show more implicit bias on these measures, but also it's even worse than that. It also makes you blind to racial disparities and racial discrimination in the face of evidence of it. People are like, oh no, that can't be.
Right,
and so they just ignore it.
Wow. Well, that's not the death knell for colorblindness. I think that one right there, that one takes the cake. So let me ask about this data, right? That is to say, you know, I'm not an empirical social scientist, and those of us who aren't always have a little snide thing to say about data here and there. But I'm wondering, you know, is this just another way? I mean, this would be my sort of cynical, grumpy end of the semester person talking, or end of the quarter, as you put it. You know, it seems that every generation and every field comes up with new research to prove something that, you know, seems profoundly consistent and obvious. and you know, it doesn't matter what the methods are, right? I mean, and actually what's interesting is, you know, you're got an incredible Genius Award, congratulations. And then Jennifer Eberhardt got another one doing very similar work. So it's like implicit bias is the new, you know, sexy child of, yes, there's racism. Okay. Why? How? Can you I know, that's good. Yeah, if I were you, I'd be happy about that too. But I'm just wondering, can you speak to this question of data and what this move means? Is it productive for our ability to get to another level of recognition and transformation? Or is there a certain level at which we're treading water? And what are the dangers of how this approach might be used, you know, even as we see the incredible results of clarity that it produces?
So I think there's enormous potential, and I think we're seeing the enormous potential of this mind science array of tools. So it's not just implicit bias, but racial anxiety and stereotype threat to actually explain the cognitive dissonance. I think what's been really difficult, frankly, since, you know, the sort of the mid-1960s is once the consciousness, once the egalitarian value war was won, once we actually did strike down the de jure discriminatory laws, for a lot of white people, the question is, well, what do we have to do now? You know, we agree that we shouldn't be racist, so what's left? What's the problem? And as I mentioned at the sort of the outset, people really are convinced I'm a good person, and so the assumption is, if I'm a good person, if I'm not a racist, that means that I'm going to do this race thing right. And at the same time, because everybody else is a good person for the most part, except for the, you know, few people who use racial epithets, you know, because most of us are good people, that means the current disproportionate, you know, distribution of wealth, all the structural inequalities have to be caused by something else. What this work has done, what the incredible work of Jennifer Eberhardt, Jennifer Richeson, all these, you know, brilliant people, what this work has done is it's actually given an explanation as how two realities can simultaneously be true. People, in fact, we can believe you or me when we say, I'm not a conscious racist. But at the same time, we're going to show you really compelling, dramatic evidence that your behaviors, my behaviors, may not be consistent with my values. So I was saying to Trish when we started this, I got 5 minutes to give a talk to a bunch of business people who were, again, very skeptical. And I showed them the Tom Meyer study, you know, first reaction. And then there's another study that's really compelling about doctors giving different treatment recommendations to black patients than white patients who presented identically. And that, again, really freaks people out. Doctors? And so when you have these evidentiary support for present-day racially discriminatory behavior that isn't linked to, and so that means you're a racist, it actually does, I think, allow a more productive conversation that people really have to start taking seriously who have these values. Now you walk the walk. And now that we're actually having, you know, sort of research on interventions that institutions can engage in, that individuals can engage in, showing if I recognize the potential that I may take race into effect as a doctor, there can be self-correction. I have to recognize that race matters. So I actually think so long as we don't make the implicit bias meme into just a meme, if we take the work that's being done, this amazing work in social psychology, and link it with, you know, sort of all of our structural issues, I think we can actually make real strides.
Right. So yeah, I guess this is a great segue for, you know, what I did put on the list of questions, which is, you know, I'm a little bit worried about what happens, well, always worried about what happens to scholarship in the wrong hands, but you know, I'm a little bit worried about the vulnerability of this research because, you know, as a person who studies structural racism, and I stay away from the unconscious because I really don't know what's going on down there. I just leave that to the experts. But I do feel like there's a lot of evidence of structural explicit activity. I'm like, well, we get that cleared away, we'll worry about the unconscious, she says as a, you know, reformed structural Marxist. I mean, you know, why, so what do we say? Because one of my worries is that this might go the way of sort of personal prejudice. So we all have implicit bias. It's sort of, it'll disappear and it's just a legacy. You know, what are the solutions that you think prevent implicit bias research from becoming another means by which the status quo is normalized? That's one question. And the other one is, is that enough? That's not enough? Let's start with that. Yeah. I have three, but let's start with that. And we'll see if that will take the rest of my time, I'm sure.
Okay, I mean, so for me, yeah, obviously I care about implicit bias. I think uncovering bias broadly defined and not in the way that it's often used as, okay, now we're all prejudiced, yay, we're equal and equally prejudiced, right? That's not useful to me. What's useful to me is, you know, trying to show that just the normal processes of mind and brain, they're connected, turns out the same thing, give rise to this kind of thing. And that actually, you know what, who's not immune? Police officers aren't immune, juries aren't immune, doctors aren't immune, teachers, we're all affected by this, and our values have almost nothing to do with it. Right? So for me, I go the other way, where understanding how pervasive biases are, not just good, bad, but the stereotypes are, that actually makes me more committed to structural fixes. Because you know what can blunt my influence as Jennifer Richeson, who went to Brown, and of course only want to hire people who went to Brown, and you know, I'm all happy when I meet somebody who went to Brown. Turns out that's implicit bias. You know what fixes that? Having structures in place that say, you know what, you actually have to interview a lot of people. You know what? There are many of us should be interviewing us, and we all shouldn't have gone to Brown, right? Because we know that's how it works. I mean, I'm here in part because of favoritism, right? That's implicit bias.
I would have loved you anyway.
But, but you know, I mean, it's the in-group ties,
yes,
right?
That's true.
That
no, you're
pull
absolutely
and
right.
bind, and you know what? That's fine when we're talking about, you know, Seattle versus the Patriots and all that stuff, and we don't see it as strange there. But it also is operating when we're talking about who are we going to hire, right? I mean, you see, I mean, my department, on my watch, you know, I've been there 10 years, lots of well-meaning people. We have 7 tenure-track women in my department of 30. 7 in a psychology department. There's no other way to explain that besides failure to attend and to put in place structures that prioritize diversity and equity.
But see, that gets to my last question, and then those of you, I'm sure there should be questions, so get the mics ready. So, okay, you know, at some point, you can explain it over and over again, and then it seems to me we go from implicit to just implicit, I mean, to explicit self-protectionism. So, I mean, I guess I'm wondering at what point, yes, we need structural, you know, guides to sort of bumper ourselves, but that requires a kind of recognition and investment. And I would argue that that's not necessarily the case. And, you know, is this not just about sort of awareness of the unconscious, but a little bit more of a political project, right, that has to be engaged? And I guess I'm wondering if you could speak to a little bit of your own experiences as either of you as a researcher and certainly as an activist on this question of, you know, what happens once people know and it's unassailable, and the answer is, you know, structural bumpers, and then the answer to that is, nah, I'm all right. because what you said is we've known stereotype threat for 20 years. And look at all these well-meaning, a whole generation has gone to college and graduated and has no access to a context in which this has been implemented. So, I mean, I guess, you know what I mean? Yeah, maybe that's for you, Rachel, and then we'll throw it open.
Science is slow.
Yeah, it's that slow?
Science is slow, yeah. We have 1 paper in 95.
Okay, all right, okay.
So clearly implicit bias in the mind sciences aren't alone going to solve racially disproportionate power. We know that's the case. But I think when you combine activism, political pressure, demographic change, you know, economic imperatives, opening markets, you know, if we put, frankly, all the fields together, then some real work can be done. Because I think what the mind sciences can help us do is essentially, first of all, they give us tools when thinking about political projects and how to potentially blunt what might be, you know, some would say dog whistling by those who really do have it fixed in their mind to maintain power as it's currently distributed. We can blunt that by understanding people's implicit reactions. So frankly, it can be a tool for political activists. Second, when you do have, you know, when we have Jim Comey, the head of the FBI, suddenly having to grapple with and acknowledge the role that this is playing in police departments, and when, you know, again, there's activism, there's political pressure. It's, you know, as my Marxist father would say, it's a multi-dimensional protracted struggle, and this is but one tool.
Oh, that's a great
Amen,
dad.
sister.
That's pretty good. Excellent. Thank you very much. All right, I would love to have us take some questions, comments. Where is the mic, actually? We have a few. Okay, we'll go over there to those two, and so let's make them maybe one person for each question so that we can get a few in. Hey, dear.
Hi, Professor Rose.
How are you?
My name's Chase Marshall. I'm from the class of 2010. And some of the exercises that you all shared made me think about the ways, like the color cognitive exercise made me think about the ways that when things defy what we assume, like our brains like just frizzle. And I'm interested in, with implicit bias, some of the cause and effect of defying assumptions. So if a black woman is quick with numbers, if an Asian woman has a quick wit and is boisterous, are there any, is there any data research around trajectories and or structural navigation with that, not necessarily underperforming or overperforming in terms of quantitative things, but just defying convention?
Either one of you.
Okay, yeah, so great question, thanks. And you know, so it depends, and I told Tricia science is slow, but on average, especially in the gender domain, it's less been shown in the race domain, but in the gender domain, non-conforming women are often punished for non-conformity. So being extraordinarily agentic as a woman, there's a penalty for that, and there's a cost to be made. You know, bosses, leaders, male leaders can get away with being angry in the workplace. No one thinks this is a good idea, but they not only get away with it, people say, oh, that must be the boss. A woman shows anger for a legitimate reason in the workplace, and people not only think she should be fired, they think she shouldn't have the right. They lose cannon. She's out of control, and you know, you lose status. So in the gender domain, it's very clear that it is you're walking a tightrope in order to become a leader, right? You've got to be a little agentic to become a leader, but being too agentic and in control and leader-like actually can lead to sort of a severe backlash.
Great, thank you for that. Chris, and then we'll come over here. I saw some hands. Yeah, we'll come right here in a minute. Yeah, thanks. Oh, yeah, go ahead. We'll just stay and then we'll roll over. We'll psychologically shift.
Yeah, so I guess, you know, I'm the quant here, you know, the quantitative sort of person, and I've sat on hiring committees and things like that. This stuff seems like it's tailorable and portable to those sorts of situations. So when you're coming out with the, you know, 1.0 app that I can bring into hiring committees and say, here, you're biased, and let's fix this.
Well, first of all, there actually is an IAT app. You can put it on your phone. Yeah. We can share that after the session. But I would also say you're obviously completely right, and this is what Jen was referring to earlier. In the hiring context, the role of implicit bias and confirmation bias are so powerful, and there's some really vivid studies showing the malleability of merit. And how, you know, the identical resume, if it's schema inconsistent, you know, is it going to get the job? So the woman who's got a fabulous educational background is going to be a police chief, and the woman who's, you know, came up from being a beat cop, she doesn't get hired either way. You know, both times the group comes up with the theory that we need to have someone who's a beat cop. We need to have someone who's, you know, went to Harvard. And so understanding that that's so, and being able to sort of have the, you know, the app that you show people and just the quick study so that you create the structures in place so the metrics of merit are determined carefully enough that we can't slip in and slip up and have whatever the sort of schema consistent person necessarily be hired, even again if people aren't kind of consciously trying to make it so. So you're obviously absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree with you.
Right here, and then we'll come here. Yeah.
Thank you. First, I can't say how much I appreciated this presentation, and I hope I can get copies of the slides. I'm sure I don't speak just for myself, so that'd be great. But I have a question about, for example, the presentations you've done. I guess this question is for you about the Tom Meyer study and the doctors providing different diagnoses, because I'm actually very comforted that people, when presented with that, responded like, wow. Because I also have heard, if you look at all that's happening with vaccination right now, and the people who, I heard there was a study that the people who firmly believe that it's connected with autism, even though it's been proven that it's not, the people who firmly believe that, the more evidence they're presented with, the more they hold on to their original belief and they don't trust the new information they're being presented with. So my question for you is, have you encountered that? And how did you respond?
It's a wonderful question. And obviously, of course, you know that you're completely right that often we do, when presented with data, we do stay fixed in our view and just consider the messenger or the data to be flawed. That's very easy to do. Your question explains exactly how I and John Powell is someone at the Haas Institute who I've sort of followed and modeled myself after in an odd way as a sort of white woman can with an African American man. But I've watched him and how he presents on race, and I've watched this. He has a multi-layer effect where, first of all, by affirming that he believes that everyone in the audience in fact does have good values, but by beginning that way, and I think it's particularly powerful, frankly, when coming from him as a black man, by affirming, I believe you're good people. I believe that. And by being very genuine in believing that, and then, frankly, this is where the Stroop test comes in. By showing people that, contrary to your assumption that you have absolute control over your executive brain, you don't. But in a nice way, in a non-threatening way. And I have a couple of other tricks, a non-threatening way, showing us and having people experience together as a group the sort of disjuncture between conscious beliefs and an unconscious automaticity. That layering seems to make people a little bit open to the idea, first of all, she's not or he's not calling me a racist. Second of all, here's how it can happen that I cannot be a racist but still have my behavior manifest in certain ways. And then you get the data and you're startled by people who are clearly good people, doctors, et cetera. And then also starting to talk about ways that this can actually be changed. And so people have a sense of, in what my goal is and the goal of everyone with Perception Institute is obligation and possibility. So it's not what Jen said, we're all a little bit prejudiced. Oh, well, it's we all have the potential and the capacity to change so that we do live our values. It's very aspirational. And so at least, and what's fascinating is some of the judges associations are dying to do studies to see if it's changed them. They've actually come to me, and so I'll be calling you soon.
Oh yeah, no, I'm going to Seattle.
They actually want to do studies because, first of all, the state judges are convinced that all the evidence on judges that show how biased they are not applicable to them because they're state judges and it's all the federal judges, so they're different. But they have, so first of all, they're a little bit suspicious. But they have said, one white judge who's been a family court judge for 20 years literally was weeping when he thought, oh my God, I might have destroyed families because I had this bias. I mean, he just was so beyond moved at that potential, but also the idea, but I don't have to be this way. So that's what I would say is, and that's where, sometimes reasonably there's pushback. Aren't you just trying to make white people feel comfortable? And my response is, no, the goal isn't let's make white people feel comfortable. The goal is how do we actually get things done? And if people want to talk about white privilege a lot and express absolutely justified rage, again, who would I ever be to say they shouldn't? I would never say that. At the same time, this sort of layered approach does seem to leave some openness to people being willing to change behaviors.
Right, great. Good answer. Thank you. Yes, right behind you. Yeah. Yes, you. Someone's coming. Okay.
Hi, thank you. This is so exciting. I had a question about any research that you've done around communities of color and within our own groups, reaffirming some of these unconscious biases with each other, maybe, and how that fits into respectability politics, how it maybe dismisses clear structural racism forces, but those within the community kind of policing ourselves, and the idea in hypervigilance of reverse racism and community policing in that way too, if those topics have been discussed in our research.
That's a lot. Great questions. Yeah, so you know, people of color or people of any group are not immune to the biases that are in the smog. Beverly Daniel Tatum often calls it, of our society. They also get into our heads. We often get, if we're lucky, get counter narratives to try to balance it out, and we get it earlier than folks who aren't in the group get. So normally, on average, and the most recent research shows that people within the community, that's sort of the low side, the negative group, on average still show some in-group favoritism, so they see their group as better, but it's not as robust, it's not as extreme as sort of whites showing implicit pro-white bias. That's huge, right? Like 85% of white people at least, whereas it's more like 65% of black people show in-group favoritism at most, right? So there's a huge range of attitudes, and some are out-group favoring. And we see that, certainly, in our data. And then we see, yeah, a whole bunch of conversations about how to manage that. And right, that's in the, for those of you sociologists or recovering sociologists, right, that's in the world of Goffman, right? The stage, racial performances. Devin Carbato at the UCLA Law School has a great piece on this about performing blackness in different spaces and people's choices, or, and I would like to, I don't think all these are conscious, but strategic performances in different domains, and there's a pushback against that you're tagging. And we've shown in some of our work that yes, people do this, that's not necessarily conscious, but there's a cost to be paid. So it leads to feelings of inauthenticity, which are personally painful. And it actually, tying back to the question of belonging, doing this and requiring people to do this for, presumably for acceptance, actually makes them feel less accepted. It's like, if I have to work this hard just to maintain a sense of legitimacy in your eyes, then you know what? Even if I was actually successful, you want me here, I no longer want to be here. Yep. And that's cognitively costly, but it also is emotionally and psychologically painful. So.
Wow. Any other questions? So one, I think we have time for two more. We'll take these two. Right. You'll be our last question. Yeah.
Great presentation. About 7 years ago, Yale Law School, and this is on a more mundane level than what we've been discussing thus far, but Yale Law School released a study in that the NBA refs, the white referees, called fouls on black players, control for every variable, at a much higher elevated level than they called those same fouls on white players. They found that also, conversely, the black refs called fouls on white players on a slightly higher level than they called them on black players. Now, I'm wondering, do you know what the response of the NBA was to that, and whether the outcome was successful, or what sort of methodologies they put in place to counteract that disparity?
It's a great question. I know of the study, and you hit it exactly right, consistent with what Jennifer just said, that the white refs, you know, sort of effect size was significantly higher than the black refs. Both group had in-group preference, but it was manifested more strongly by the white refs. Big surprise. And so I remember when the study came out. I remember it got a fair amount of attention when it came out. I've not heard a word about what happened. I will check. We exchange information. We can check and let you know. But the fact that we haven't heard anything about it suggests that that one went by the wayside and did not get the attention, which is interesting.
Yeah, the same effect was just found in soccer as well. The same effect.
So I was wondering, I worked. When I go back home in France, I work on and off with the Commission for Gender Equality, which weirdly enough was put in place by conservatives, not by the Socialist Party, which is really weird. And we do a program that teaches teachers in K-12 how to recognize gender bias. Because there was a French study that was made a while ago that stated that when girls come in elementary school, come in the classroom, teachers will compliment them on their appearance. And when a boy comes in, teachers will ask them what they did the day before. And I was wondering if there were similar studies made in the US, and I know that the US public school system is much more fragmented than the French system, but is there a consideration toward K-12 teachers? Because we've talked a lot today and yesterday about college students, but it seems to me that college students at one point will become teachers, some of them, and what can we do to teach them and study the effects of K-12 bias?
Yeah, great question. I think one of the domains that there has been some purchase has been in teachers, implicit bias across the board, and actually with more concern about race, in part because conversations and concern for the achievement gap, some about gender because of women in STEM. And we know in girls, it starts early, right? Girls are doing just fine, in elementary school and middle school, and then all of a sudden you see this divergence, and it gets ridiculous in college. So it's clearly not about the girls, right? It's about something that we're doing to them. So there actually are a lot of these conversations. I think we haven't pushed hard enough, right? So this great work came out recently about, again, sort of the flip side of implicit bias. Again, it's not about individuals, but it's about our ideas. What does genius look like? And we think that genius looks like a guy, right? The image that immediately pops up is male. And you see that manifest in who then gets in genius fields. And the gatekeepers of fields, other faculty, independent of their actual gender, also have these same views. So philosophy looks just like, the most male STEM field that you can imagine, but we don't think of it that way because it's humanities or social science. Turns out it's the same thing. And what's similar? They think it takes something, intelligence, Q-like, genius to make it, right? And so that turns out to be young men who get to make it there, and not women, right? So we're doing this all the time, and from very young ages, and the way we mark categories. I mean, the fact that we still say, hello, boys and girls, when they come in, right? Are we prepared to deal with the reality of transgender in how we've organized elementary schools in this country? No, not really. We're not prepared, right? And it's gonna be difficult, and it's gonna take something of us. And it's actually not, I sort of push back on the idea that, what we need to do is inclusion is not just making some people feel more comfortable. It's actually saying to other people, you've been way too comfortable. You need to be uncomfortable a little bit, some of the time. And it's sharing the burden of discomfort. That's what inclusion looks like, and that's gotta be okay.
Amen. Thank you, Jennifer. Just before we break, I just want to say that, I think for those of you who are here and working on these issues at various universities, I mean, this is a really urgent call that diversity work is not a quiet, calm, let's all get along project, and that there's an incredible amount of evidence to prove this is absolutely necessary. And thank you both so much for what you do and for coming to Brown. You can just join me in thanking them.
We should take this on the road.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was great.